And we are here. Well, thanks. Somebody already gave a little smile or a thumbs up. That's awesome. Thank you, folks. Okay, just gonna get this nice and big and be all set. Okay, so like I always like to say, hi everybody. First of all, if you have a second in your chat, tell me who's here. And that way I can say hi to you. But you don't have to if you don't want to. Totally no pressure, right? Okay, so everyone, first of all, I hope you're all doing really well. This new step that we're taking in step 2 is, as you know, all about anxiety and learning emotional regulation. Hi, Sherry. So this is, a biggie. This is a biggie. This is a very important step. Hi there, Sean. I'm glad you're listening. That makes me really happy. Because you know what? You lived a lot of this stuff, and y'all are really like lovely and welcoming, because we have a burgeoning teen community, and that's actually one of the things that I wanted to announce. Pardon me. More, I want to just kind of edit or just navigate that. So hi, Gavin. Okay, thanks, guys. So forgive me. This is a very important step 2, because truthfully, anxiety is one of the most pervasive and constant factors that influence those of us on the spectrum. And when you understand why, it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, which is why I am really excited, just to kind of reiterate here that we do now have the live teen, or rather the teen lounge. So they've got their entire own space where they can talk, and of course it is overseen. Of course we are making sure everybody is safe, and it's important to not feel like you're being overlooked all the time, or not, I suppose, overlooked, but looked over in this case, right? So super important. And if you are somebody who's got a kiddo or a teen, even young adults, I know that we've got a couple early university students. Y'all are absolutely fine there, considering we have 17, 18-year-olds as well. Okay, so all those things. Yay, good stuff. So last week, folks, or in the last step, we had gotten some requests to make the Q&A longer, to make it a 30-minute session, and I am open to doing that. As I've said to you before, it's really important to me that you, as founding members, truly have a voice in what we're doing here. It's really important because you have shown me and given me a place in your hearts and in your lives, and in some of the most intimate moments of your world, and I appreciate that. And so I want you to always know that you are heard, and that I am listening. To that point, I think as we learn and go forward together a little bit between in that processing week, and then going into that next week, I'm always going to let you know right away as we start the step, as you saw in the materials, what the topic is. This week we're going to be talking, this week and next we're going to be talking about anxiety and special interests and emotional regulation. And always want to make the point to you that everything I'm putting out there, I ask the adults to first try and implement the exercises and the lessons in your own life, whether or not you yourself are on the spectrum. Because the things that I'm guiding you through are absolutely more essential for those of us on the spectrum, but they are always applicable and beneficial to the entire human spectrum. So before you start using it with your kids, start practicing it within yourself. Now, I want to make the point again, I know that Sherry's son, Angel, used Edgar, and Karen talked about practicing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounder with her kiddos. And I have to, was it Sonia? No, I'm not sure. I don't remember. Somebody else talked about using using Edgar in their house. And I love that, right? That is the point. That is the point, that you role model then for your children, for your partner, for your whole family, for your students, whatever the case may be. Remembering that we can only be role models if we are being real and human and fallible. And not too long, I'm going to talk to you about tightrope walkers, and why they are impressive. And it's not, I'll give you this hint, it's not because they make it look so easy. It's not. So, I'll just finish that. It's because they wobble. It is the wobble and then the recovery that make us gasp, and that also make us relate and stay engaged. Nobody wants to try to, follow someone who's got it all down perfectly, because, well, number one, they don't. And number two, then we are always forever criticizing ourselves. That's not fair. That all being said, in going ahead and saying, sure, if we have enough material to go over, that folks have enough questions, I am happy to extend it to a half an hour. By that same token, coming off one step to another, and again, I think this is something to look at as we go forward. But if there aren't enough questions, then I'm going to just say, yay, everybody's feeling good and informed and connected, and that's wonderful. Certainly, the way I can know that for absolutely sure is by seeing your comments on the various lessons, and please email us and please post things, because that's how I know that things are working for you. I wanted to also touch on something that I believe it was Cecilia had talked about, and that she was going to be taking her little boy for his evaluation, and she had found the masterclass with Dr. Wendy last week to be really helpful and informative, and that's fantastic. That's why it's there, right? So whether we're talking about your own identification or we're talking about for your children, the points again remain consistent. So to that point, I actually reminded her, and in case we all have a lot going on in our lives, so it's very possible she hadn't even had a chance to look at it yet. But that the portrait of neurodiversity is what was in lesson 4. Actually, I'm sorry, it was an addition. Yeah, lesson 4. It was lesson 4, the very end of the second module of step 1. So literally the last lesson had the portrait of neurodiversity. And it's really one of the most important tools that I offer you. I'm going to make a video to explain it all thoroughly, and that hopefully will even bring it to life more for you. But if you are, kind of looking to be able to explain how one of your family members looks like they're, possibly fitting a particular portrait or pattern, then it's really, really important that you use this tool, this portrait of neurodiversity, as a tool to say, okay, let's use this. And this is the same for the checklist. If you're an adult and you're wanting to work either on yourself or look at yourself, or perhaps an older child, these are what I want you to use so that you can begin to delineate and basically a factual. So it doesn't sound like your emotion is invested, like you have an agenda, or you are prescribing what you want the clinician to come away with. Because I will tell you, I have learned that never goes well. And I understand, if I were in that clinician's place, I wouldn't want to feel preached to. right? And so we have to be a little bit careful. And this is where it comes to that point of doing a dance. That's right, social nuance, people, right? Not so easy. And I will tell you that one of my greatest sources of anxiety for a good while was interacting with my kids' schools. And you would think, that's what I do. I was a teacher, I was a therapist, and this is literally around the world I go and I talk to professionals like that. So why should I be so scared? Because then there are the social nuances and complexities of how do you put things forth in ways that don't insult the intelligence and experience of folks on whose determinations a good chunk of your life or your child's life may depend. And that's something we did talk about during the masterclass. I believe it's in the second half of it, where we kind of talked about with Dr. Brenda, what should we be looking for? How should we be looking, or what kind of reactions should we want from a clinician? How do we know, and what do we do if a clinician is not really showing either a lot of respect for things that we're bringing up, is showing that it's more of a pat, okay, thank you very much, but not listening to you, or perhaps is either completely dismissive or just doesn't have his or her facts together. And unfortunately, that is the case with some folks, more often than I'd like to see. So what do you do then? If you are truly not being listened to, you don't continue. You are a customer, just as if you were at a restaurant and you were unhappy. You first voice what it is that's concerning you, and if that doesn't work, then you decide and you go out. You are allowed to do that. You are allowed to do that. You, your children, your parents, your partner are not people to be tolerated, okay? You are people to be celebrated, respected, and understood. Of course, the way we put things out there is going to have an effect on the way people respond to us. It's just a fact. So we talked about with Dr. Wendy in the masterclass, what do you do? How do you override the anxiety of not knowing that if you come down too hard, things are definitely not going to go your way, but you also don't want to feel dismissed or whiny or be wrong. Understood. That's where I want you to use the portrait of neurodiversity and the checklist. And again, those are in the final lesson of step 1. Okay. Use these broad but important characteristics, basically, that are the compilation of what I have seen and gleaned over 10 years of extensive work around the world. And just as, and perhaps more importantly, from my own life and my own children, and from folks' responses to the things that I've written and put out there. And I will tell you, it is a guideline, that portrait of neurodiversity and checklist. It is a guideline that Dr. Wendy uses with the parents with whom she interacts, and certainly with the families, with adults as well for themselves. Use those, go through them. Go through each of the bullet points and take a look and see, okay, so if we're talking about special interests, because we're going to be talking about that during this step. What does that look like? What is the purpose that it's serving? What are some examples of how that might kind of show up? That was something I always was challenged by, and I can understand why it made Wendy and many other people really, leery of checklists. As the story goes, folks were talking in one of the forums about Tony Attwood, and he has a very well-renowned book on Asperger's and has a checklist in it. Well, if you've read Autism in Heels, I don't mention the checklist that I kind of overhauled or added to. That's the point. But it was Tony's. And I say Tony because Dr. Atwood and I are colleagues. And if you notice that he actually was one of the most avid, I want to say supporters, celebrators of Autism and Heals. And I also was featured, and I appreciate this very much, as one of the world's top Aspie mentors in one of his books. So I appreciate that he, like a good clinician will, was not put off by, but in fact was intrigued by my taking what he did and extrapolating, right? So everything in his checklist was great, only, as I say, in Heals didn't so much relate or look like something that I could identify with as someone who, was wearing a bra in a minivan and had a love for glitter, right? You had to make it work and figure out what the needs were that were being served. So what you need to do is take those lists, take those bullet points, and really methodically think about your child, your partner, yourself, and go through them. And this is, in brainstorming, like when you're writing, there's no right or wrong, you just write that, okay? Doesn't have to be sentences, but okay, so special interests. Think back, like it can look, this may not look like a topic, but again, we need to understand what something's serving to understand that it might actually fit the need. My middle guy, his special interest, his very first special interest that I can remember were cell phones. Now, babies love phones. I mean, that's been a thing forever. They just do, right? Okay, cool. But no. I'm talking that if the phone went away, if this phone went away, we were in emotional meltdown craziness. I'm going to ask your forgiveness for the fact that the landscaping folks are outside this very moment with leaf blowers. I apologize for that. But okay, so it was what happened when he didn't have that. And our special interests are distractions from anxiety levels when they get high. These are areas of interest anyway, but where specifically, usually, there are things that can be categorized. There are things that can become almost encyclopedias. In fact, I always say, if you can have an encyclopedia about it, whether it's Tudor hairstyles or all the aliens in Star Wars, it's probably someone's special interest, okay? And it is not wrong to use something we like as a distraction. After all, when we're getting, overwhelmed or anxious, pretty sure that actually that's what why most people have hobbies, because it gives them, just something that they like to do versus all the things they might have to do. So it's not that different. It's the intensity. And that little boy, it wasn't a temper tantrum that he was having if somebody took that phone away. He was having a meltdown, and a meltdown is not about logic, and it is not about discipline. Okay, it is about understanding. And at a time when he was simply too young to logic, and also, as you saw in lesson 1 and 2 of this week, right, when we are in the upstairs brain, that's one thing, but if we are locked downstairs, down here, we can't get to a place of logic, reasoning, or problem solving anyway. So that actually counted as his first special interest. He took it everywhere. It was as much as, a security item as anything else. And I had one of those for a long time too. What does it say if you're a 9-year-old? She speaks from personal experience, a 9 or 10-year-old who still had a security blanket. It says anxiety is a part of your life. And the last thing I want to mention that does tie into that, and we'll be getting to next week, this in the second half, in module 2 of step 2. I'm sorry, you mentioned that that you said that second only to sensory issues, you thought that anxiety was the thing that was most difficult for your son. I'm going to say this again, and this is one of those, and I will tell you that Temple Grandin and I are dear friends. And one of the things that has come up to every time we've spoken is that truly, we believe that varying levels, and you read about this in the beginning of step 2 in the introduction, that some and varying levels of anxiety are simply pervasive for those of us on the spectrum, generally due to either, and this is where I'm talking this is what I want you to hear, either to social experiences or sensory experiences. Sensory experiences, when they are incompatible with the environment around us, cause anxiety. So it's not that anxiety is a separate thing. It's the result of sensory or social challenges. Does that make sense? So it's why it's a significant part of what we will be working on during this step. Okay, everyone, I'm getting ready to sign off. Unless anybody else has a specific question that you want to post, I will kind of give it like 30 seconds to see if we see anything new, and I'd be happy to respond to that. Otherwise, I really am looking forward to seeing people's brain houses and what characters you put in there. It's a great tool for yourself, for kids, for students. I think it's a fun thing even to do with, with your partner, but tangible and concrete learning and illustrations really help, So brain houses and the box on the shelf, which is coming to you tomorrow. It is really, I think, the simply best tool that you can use. And I have had adults use it in their offices, kids use it in classrooms, certainly at home. The best anxiety management tool that allows you to retain a feeling of control over whatever it is that is making you feel anxious while not succumbing to that anxiety. Okay? All right, everyone. It was wonderful to see you. I will see you next week. Know that next week, we're going to be still talking about anxiety and sensory experiences and how social experiences all play in, and the import of emotional regulation. It is truly one of the most foundational things that can change your life. So go build a brain house. Okay? All right, everybody. Love you much. See you soon. Be in touch. Bye, guys.